Recording. And we are live. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for August 15th, 2022. Councilmember Saunders said that he wasn't going to be able to make it for health reasons, said he has good days and bad days, and this just wasn't the best day. I assured him we'd manage without him, so we will go ahead and do that. With that, I will be leading us in invocation and pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come together to do the people's business. Lord, I pray that you will grant us wisdom as we seek to serve our residents. Please place protection over our first responders that are out there serving the residents today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item we need to get to is approval of the minutes. You all received a copy of the August 1st regular meeting minutes. If there's no discussion on that, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. With that, we'll move on to financial statement review. Ms. Mathis, come on down.
Good evening. Once it pops up here, we should be looking at the July 2022 financial statements. So we will start off with the general fund. Our current year-to-date is $263,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $3,000 more than the prior year. That's our county millage tax. These do kind of yo-yo through the year. Apparently some people paid their taxes a little early, and we got a kind of a bigger payment this last month that was kind of out of trend, but that's okay. Franchise fees current year-to-date is $41,000 ahead of budget year-to-date, $101,000 more than the prior year. Our state turnback funds are $15,000 ahead of budget year-to-date, $61,000 more than the previous year. Our county sales tax is $260,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $317,000 more than the prior year. City sales tax is $41,000 ahead of budget year-to-date, $63,000 more than the prior year. And the police department current year-to-date is $82,000 ahead of budget year-to-date, $72,000 more than the previous year. The lot fee turnback funds that we did get beginning of July were $20,000 more than the annual budget for that line item. So, and then in the fire department, they're $125,000 ahead of budget year-to-date and $46,000 more than the previous year. And their lot fee turnback funds were $16,000 more than the budgeted amount for that line. In animal services, they're $1,000 ahead of budget year-to-date, $6,000 more than the previous year. Parks, $49,000 ahead of budget year-to-date, $11,000 more than the prior year. Seniors is $35,000 ahead of budget year-to-date, $51,000 more than the prior year. And all of our other department revenues are ahead of budget year-to-date and ahead of the prior year, other than our miscellaneous income, which just varies based on the year. It looks like it's way lower than the previous year because the prior year we had that big $600,000 plus operating transfer from the capital improvement fund into the general fund to purchase that fire engine. So it's going to look like we're way off from the prior year, but that was just a variance last year. So overall, revenues for the year are $1.3 million ahead of budget year-to-date. With that $646,000 operating transfer, it only looks like it's $374,000 more than the prior year. If you pull that out, we're looking closer to $900,000 more than the prior year. On the expenditure side, in the general fund, most departments continue to remain below budget year-to-date, other than that citywide services, which has all those big annual renewals in it. And again, overall expenses are expected to be higher than the previous year because we budgeted them to be higher, and they are continuing to trend that way. So as of the end of July, the fund balance is $4.6 million over the required minimum balance. The current year revenues are currently $267,000 more than the expenses, and our unappropriated balance in the general fund related to the ARPA funds is still $2.6 million. So take the ARPA out of that 4.6 and you're still about $2 million over the required minimum reserve in the general fund. I like being able to give reports like this. Taking a look real quick at our street fund. Millage tax, $77,000 ahead of budget year to date, $1,000 more than the previous year. Our turnback funds are $232,000 under budget year to date. I do expect some additional turnback funds in August. They usually kind of, when the state closes out their fiscal year, we kind of get some extra funds at the end of the year. So hopefully we'll see that one change. We are $64,000 ahead of the prior year. And the street aid program is $35,000 ahead of budget year to date and $32,000 more than the previous year. Both the streets and senior services transportation department expenses are under budget year to date. So the current available street fund balance at the end of July was right at $5.2 million. And then taking a look at our sanitation fund. Currently, the sanitation fees are $4,000 ahead of budget year to date and $11,000 more than the previous year. Operating expenses, $19,000 under budget and $67,000 more than the prior year. Personnel expenses are $169,000 under budget and $37,000 more than the previous year. And the sanitation fund balance at the end of July was right at $1.8 million. So, just some other updates from the finance department. Auditors completed on-site work last week. Excuse me, not last week. I need to fix my slide there. My apologies. 3 weeks ago, on our 2020 audit, they completed their on-site work, and they got some of our 2021 audit work on site. They were able to go on and pull some stuff. I know they did some state compliance testing out at police department and courts and things like that, where they're pulling and testing records there. So we got a lot of the on-site work done. The audit report and the ECFR have been slightly delayed. Right at the end of the on-site work, I unfortunately got COVID and was out for 2 weeks, and that was right when I was trying to wrap up that report, and I was not able to work for 2 weeks. I got pretty sick. So trying to get it wrapped up in the next week or so. It will take 2 to 3 weeks for the auditors to review it once I finish the report. So our timeline got pushed out a little bit there. I'm sorry, but things are still going well, and we'll get that report done as quickly as we can. As soon as that report's done, we're going to start working on the 21 report, and they're going to come finish any on-site testing that we need to do for 21. We are also working our go-live date for our new financial management system software is next Monday. A week from today, we had OpenGov on-site last week doing training with department staff on cash receipting in the software system, as well as purchase orders in the system. Right now, they give us lots and lots of paper. We're moving to a system where they're actually in the software doing this stuff, and then it comes to the finance department to review and post. This is kind of our first step. We'll be adding more features to it in the next couple months. But overall, the training went very, very well. I was very pleased that all of the departments gave us really good feedback about software, ease of use, setup. They're excited to be going digital. They're excited to be moving into a more streamlined process. I think it's ultimately going to save them a lot of time so that they can do more of the city's work and less administrative work. So we're excited about that. I'm not freaking out right now, which is pretty good considering I didn't think I'd be this calm going into go live next week, but everything's going really, really well with that. So we're excited for that as well. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Mosley?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to ask you about, on the general fund, it shows animal control fees, what we've gotten in so far this year, and then what was the prior year actual. And I was wondering where the prior year actual came from, because I was thinking we didn't have any revenue from animal control?
We had owner surrender fees, we had pet tag fees, things like that. So there were revenues in animal control. There were not revenues for donations, and there were not revenues for adoption fees. So,
What was the first one?
owner surrender type things, or I think they pay a shelter fee if your dog gets out and so many times, and you have to pay to get your dog back out of the shelter. I'm not entirely sure what all those fees are, but I know also the pet tags, the registrations are a big part of that.
Okay, so we actually had some revenue last
We did have
year.
some revenue,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Also, I think everybody got an email from Patty Robinson today, and she's been, I guess, looking over our capital assets and all that. And she said she said you'll keep a list of capital assets like cars and I guess buildings and furniture, things like that. And she was saying that there's been, and I guess you present that to the auditors every year, and they go off of that. But she said there's been no inventory to make sure all that stuff is really still there. Do we do that, or what do you think?
So we will be doing that. So it's not something you necessarily have to do every year. It probably needs to be done every few years. I haven't had a chance to do one since I've been here. That is on our list for this fall because our new software has an asset management system. So we have had our assets in Excel, and the list has been maintained with additions each year and removals, mostly the higher dollar removals. If you go back in the history of the city, at one point in time, we were capitalizing every single computer we purchased and things like that. We kind of have a $5,000 threshold now, so all the little miscellaneous stuff doesn't get capitalized. It gets expensed each year when we buy it. So a lot of that kind of stuff is still on the list. It's fully depreciated. It's been fully depreciated for a very long time, and I just need to do some cleanup work with it. And we have plans to do that after we finish this 2021 audit. So we'll have that list as of 2021, what everybody should have, and we're going to go work with each department to kind of clean up that list.
When you say they've been fully depreciated, would that mean the list would include that item with a zero or the original purchase price?
It's got the original purchase price and the accumulated depreciation, which net to zero.
Okay.
So one of the things, too, to keep in mind is that our financial reports that you have here, if you look at your balance sheet on here, especially for the general fund and the street fund, there are no capital assets on that balance sheet. In fund accounting for the governmental funds, we use a modified accrual basis. So the only fund that we have that has assets on the books that we maintain year-round is the sanitation fund, because it's a business-type activity fund, and those books are kept on a full accrual basis. When we do the ACFR, part of the process is to go from the fund financial statements to the government-wide statements. Those government-wide statements are where we add all of our debt, we add all of our capital assets and things like that. And so all of those footnotes become part of that. And so we do maintain them, and they do get audited as part of preparing the ACFR. But if we were just doing, if we weren't preparing the ACFR, which means taking our books to that full government-wide system, then the only capital assets we would have to maintain financial records on would be in the sanitation fund.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine government is not that important, other than we don't want assets to just disappear.
Exactly. And having a good list, which is what we're going to get to, is going to be helpful as we start to do long-range capital asset planning, which is, I know, something the council has wanted to do. I know it's something the mayor has wanted to do. We had to get caught up first and have good data to start doing that. So that's part of our plan to get that inventory done this fall so that we can start doing that.
Okay. Anything else you want to share with us on that, or that's all the question I've got?
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Thank you. Very thorough answer. Is there, if there's no additional comments, I'd I'd entertain a motion to accept the financial statement.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to accept the financials. Is there any additional discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. At this time, I would entertain a motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved. Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We will move on to unfinished business. The first item of unfinished business is the third reading of ordinance 1070, enacting supplemental provisions of this code. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1070, an ordinance adopting and enacting supplemental provisions of the City Code for the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, providing for the repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, providing for the manner of amending such code, and providing when such code and this ordinance shall become effective.
All right, this is on third reading.
Motion to approve ordinance 1070. Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve ordinance 1070. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Mosley,
Yes.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Gartner,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Tierney,
Yes.
Councilmember Shin,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt.
Yes. Motion passes. Ordinance 1070 is adopted. Moving on to new business for Resolution 2022-40. I received a notification from the applicant's representative that the applicant had a scheduling conflict and wasn't able to make it, and therefore asked if the council would go ahead and table this resolution until the next meeting so that he can be present in case there's any discussion on that. So I'd entertain that motion. I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion to table Resolution 2022-40 to the next City Council meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. With that, we will move on to, not throwing my agenda away. We'll move on to the first reading of ordinance 1071, amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1071, an ordinance amending the Maumelle Land Use Plan and Map and for other purposes.
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I attended the Planning Commission meeting on this, and I've got some questions. Basically, from what I understand, this is about a lot that is actually on Murphy Drive around in the industrial area, and it backs up to, I guess what is going to be, they call it the Pfeiffer Project. And I was wondering if the Mr. Grimmer, could you give us a little background on what's going on here?
Scott Grummer, Planning and Permits, City of Maumelle, 550 Edgewood Drive. So this request is coming for a part of a parcel that is on Murphy Drive. It backs up to the property that is the Harrison Pfeiffer development that's currently being excavated behind the used storage, if you're familiar with that area. As that project has progressed, and they're doing a very good job keeping the buffers as we requested, they came to find that working with the additional land behind it could make all that developable. So Mr. Pfeiffer is actually working to acquire the land that abuts Murphy Drive and wants to include some of that land behind this into this parcel on commercial commercial Park Drive. Right, so it makes the commercial portion more developable, while leaving a portion of the land on Murphy Drive industrial. So they're seeking the entitlements of rezoning this parcel from I-1 to C2, so they can merge it with the lot on Commercial Park Drive.
All right. Is there anything that's right now on the industrial lot? Is there a business there?
No, sir, it's a vacant lot.
Vacant lot, so the whole thing is vacant then, both parcels?
Correct. They proposed doing warehouse type industrial on that lot. They had shown some proposed site plans, but they've not submitted anything at this point in time.
Okay. Do we know what, and can we, I guess we can ask what the developer would like to do with that new C2 zoning in that lot? I assume he has not bought it, so who is the applicant right now?
Well, the applicant's representative is Holloway Engineering, and it's Gene Pfeiffer is the applicant.
Now, does he own that? Does he own the lot?
I think he's in the process of purchasing the lot that's under rezoning, and he has the owner's authorization, but they're seeking the entitlements before they purchase to make sure that they can do what is intended. If they can't get the rezoning and the subdivision merger, then it doesn't make sense for him to take that land into the commercial portion.
Okay. I'm assuming he has the proper paperwork, because as I understand it, an applicant has to be the owner of the property. Is that correct, Ms. City Attorney?
For a land use plan amendment, it's actually the Planning and Permits Department that can make the request, but for zoning, it either, there's a criteria that it has to be, and it generally is the owner. Let me see if I can, when we get to the zoning, I'll tell you who applies for the zoning, but for land use, it can be the Planning and Permits Department, because that relates to the change for the zoning.
Okay, thanks.
And on the land use, staff is recommending the combination of commercial and industrial, so that it can be used for either or, for commercial or industrial.
Okay. Yeah, so it could be, with the rezoning, it could be used for industrial or commercial, correct? Is that correct? All right. Do we know what he wants to do with it? At one time, I think they were planning to do apartments and things like that.
I would have to.
We do have the applicant's representative.
While he's coming, an application for amendment this is for zoning, and as I mentioned, it goes, the Planning and Permits Department can do the land use to match the zoning, but it can maybe initiated by the City Council, the Planning Commission, the mayor, or the mayor's designee, or by one or more owners or lessees of land affected by a proposed amendment.
So it's okay that they're doing both these tonight, that the applicant's proper within our city code?
I believe they have the owner's authorization to apply on his behalf. I may be wrong, but Mr. Grummer can correct me if I am.
You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Roy Andrews, 3 Monarch Drive, representing Mr. Pfeiffer on this matter. We, at one point, had looked at doing apartments on that one property. Since this property became available, the only thing that we've really looked at is what's on Murphy Drive, which is a small warehouse type of property. Mr. Pfeiffer's just sees an opportunity, since his property backs up to this property, to make that commercial piece more viable. It's kind of long and skinny, as you see on the screen right now, and so by taking that back piece in, a portion of it, it makes that commercial more developable, and he just saw an opportunity and is wanting to take it.
Okay, so he hadn't figured out if he wants to do something commercial or try to do the conditional use and go apartments or whatever?
Not at this point, he hasn't.
Okay.
It's adjacent to what we're doing with the PRD, and think it'll be a good use facing Commercial Park rather than Murphy Drive being that deep of industrial.
Okay, All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Also, those were good questions about the applicant's representative, or who was the applicant for the zoning. Just to notice, it's unless the property owner is the one doing the developing and building, it's almost always the case that the applicant is not the owner. So for example, with the O'Reilly Senior Living, when they came in, they didn't want to buy that property unless they had the right to do what they were wanting to do. So it's what we see more often than not. Madam City Attorney?
I just wanted to go over a couple things in our code related to criteria to be used for consideration of land use amendments. There are two different code sections that apply particularly to land use. One is 54-77. The land use plan map may be amended by changing the boundaries of the land use plan categories or by changing any other provision of the map whenever the public necessity and general welfare require such amendments. So you want to be looking at public necessity and general welfare. And then down in 54-79, number 7, it states, the Planning Commission and the City Council will review the proposal and base their decision using the following guidelines. A, other changes that have occurred in the neighborhood since the land use plan was adopted or the latest amendment was enacted. B, whether these changes resulted in a change to the neighborhood's character sufficiently to justify the proposed land use plan change. C, issues and concerns raised by the neighborhood when submitted with sufficient specificity to enable the Commission or City Council to respond to the issues. And D, other substantial or technical evidence that any proponent or opponent of the proposed change submits. So those are the proper things that are there for consideration in determining whether it's in the best interest of the community as a whole to make a change to the land use map.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion on ordinance 1071? If not, this will be on second reading at the next City Council meeting. With that, we will move on to the first reading of ordinance 1072, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map. Madam City Clerk, if you could please read that by title only.
Be it enacted by the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, an ordinance to be entitled Ordinance Number 1072, an ordinance amending the Maumelle zoning map and for other purposes.
All right, thank you. This is the zoning map amendment for the property that we were just discussing. Is there, Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, is okay, the things you mentioned there as far as changing, was that for just the land use, or were you talking also about the zoning as far as being in the public necessity and general welfare and all that?
Zoning, section 94-8 also states that, and this is in relation to the zoning chapter, this chapter may be amended by changing the boundaries of the zoning districts or by changing any other provision of the chapter whenever the public necessity and general welfare require such amendment. There is some discussion as well on just the overall procedure for amendment, but those are the type of factors that we discussed with relation to land use. Should be similar factors to be considered in making that decision in relation to zoning as well.
Okay, thank you. We're under no obligation to, there's no obligation to change this at all. Is that correct? There is none. And basically we have to make sure it is in the public necessity and general welfare and those other items.
Correct. Public necessity and general welfare is the standard stated in code.
All right. I'll probably, if you wouldn't mind, keep your tab in that spot. I'll ask you to read them again probably next meeting just to refresh us. Thank you.
All right. If there's no further discussion, this will be on second reading at the next City Council meeting. With that concludes new business for the day. We'll move on to mayor's comments. Just one really quickly. Y'all know that Sarah Smith left the position of Chief of Staff, and after excessive amount of deliberation and interviewing, I'd like to announce Jay Greeland as my new Chief of Staff. He's in the back row there. So please, when you get a chance, welcome him aboard. Some of y'all may recognize him from coming to talk to the council at the during the Pinnacle Heights subdivision annexation. Most recently, he was a senior writer for the governor's office. Some of y'all may know him as the writer of Sweet Tea, the column that has been around for a little while, and an avid lover and exceptional maker of sweet tea. Not sure if that's the proper, a maker of sweet tea, brewer, I don't know. Anyways, that, and he's been a longtime journalist, so I look forward to the perspective that he will bring, and he's still on cloud nine. We'll break him in real quick, so please welcome him when you get a chance. Council member comments? Councilmember Mosley?
I've got one, I need to check and see what it is. Oh, okay, I wanted to raise just the idea, I don't know if I'm gonna make a motion to do it tonight, but a possible workshop with the Planning Commission. I'm wondering if that would be something that would be in the best interest. There are times I think they don't maybe understand some of the leanings of the council members on various issues and things, and there's some interesting things coming up as far as maybe getting our heads in the game as far as the land over on the other side of the third entrance. There's going to be something that's coming up to the council here probably in about a month, and I'd like to understand a little bit more about that myself. But what does anybody else think about that? I just jotted down a whole bunch of possible things that we could talk to them about. One thing is I've always wanted a traffic study out here in Maumelle to just see what we're doing as far as creating additional gridlocks like we had on the boulevard before we got the third entrance and stuff. That's just an example. But what's anybody else think? Including you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm speechless. No, I don't know. It's something I can think about. I don't know that it jumps out at me as a good or bad idea at this point. I can think about it.
Okay.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
In theory, sounds good, but yeah, we need to figure out more of a focus, mature that idea a little bit more.
I'd say a traffic study. Consider what should we have a policy on high density housing? A lot of times, and rezoning. Rezoning commercial to residential, things like that. I think sometimes they've been surprised that we've turned some things down, and maybe they're curious as why we turn them down. Maybe we're curious why they approve them. So stuff like that. Annexation, is it in our best interest to annex land that's going to become residential? That's a good thing. If we're not getting commercial to support the residential, do we really want to annex more residential? Variances, Planning Commission does a lot of variances, which bothers me. And, maybe we should visit about that a little bit. Just some things like that. So maybe it's best to just kind of mull that over between now and I'll bring it up again. But I don't think that's anything we've ever done. So we have some really sharp people on the Planning Commission. We have a really sharp planning director. And maybe we ought to kind of get our heads together and just visit and see if we have something to talk about at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tierney?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that in the upcoming Planning Commission right now, they've got a very important issue that's going to affect the future of Maumelle around that third entrance that we probably could, everybody in the council probably use doing all the study they can, because I think this is, going to be kind of an important thing that we will have to make some pretty hard decisions on, and maybe even change the way we do a few things, like with our long-term planning.
Thank you. Councilmember Holt?
I agree that
there's been times that I have wondered that what perspective, when the planning commission is discussing it, from what perspective are they approving it on? Is it just a legal item, and in relation to how are we approving it, on what basis? Do we understand each other? Are we supposed to be opposing positions, or is there some kind of a understanding that we are basically a team for the benefit of the city in some way, and that if we have some kind of we're not supposed to follow their lead necessarily, nor opposite the other direction, but perhaps it would help us maybe have a better understanding and less conflict, and maybe we could do a little bit better job for the citizens at large. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Any additional council member comments? Seeing none, city attorney,
No comments.
Madam City Clerk?
No comments.
With that said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank